All right, we're going to work on activity 1.2.4, where it has us make two models and then create our multi-views and dimension them this time. You're going to hear some beeps in the background. My 3D printer is going right now, so if you're hearing that, that's what that is. So to start out, we are going to need to create components for each of these shapes so that our multi-view drawings will work out correctly. We're going to start by actually saving our document. We're going to make our lives easier and do that first. So this is 1.2.4 activity, maybe something like that. Hit save. All right, now we need two different components. We're going to create our first one. We're going to hit create and then new component. This one I'm going to type in number 2 because for our activity it asks us to create the shape from number 2 and number 3 in a different worksheet. So this one's going to be number 2. All right, that's the one up here in the upper right hand corner over here. All right, what we're going to do from here is we actually need to create this. So we're going to start a sketch, and I want to start it on my front plane since I'm going to be making a rectangle using the dimensions from our front view. So I'm going to start with our front plane, and this we're actually just going to do in a couple different sketches for the practice and to make life a little simpler. So we chose our rectangle tool, and I have just realized that we need to change our units again. So we're going to come down to units, change those to inches, and hit OK. Okay, then we're going to use our rectangle tool, and if you notice, this picture here, our image, our multi-view with our isometric, tells us that we have 2 blocks equals 1 inch. So if we measure how many blocks this edge is, we have 6 blocks, so that will be 3 inches across. This is also 6 blocks, so we will have 3 inches in both directions. So I will click at our origin to set our first point down. I will type the number 3. I'm going to hit tab and then type number 3 again. I'm going to either click my cursor or hit enter, and we have our first box. I'm going to finish our sketch, and then I'm going to extrude, and this is going to be, if we come back to our picture over here, we have 1.5 inches. So 3 blocks, 1.5 inches. So this is 1.5 for our extrusion, and we can hit OK. Now we need to actually cut out these 2 different squares. So I'm going to start with a sketch on this surface. Remember, you can choose the surface of the object instead of coming back to these original planes. So I'm going to choose this front surface of my box, and I want to make a square that is 2 inches in either direction, starting from our top right corner. So I hit rectangle, I click my top right corner, and I'm going to bring my cursor down to the left to make sure that it's going in the correct direction. I type 2, I hit the tab key, I type 2 again, I hit enter. We finish our sketch. We're going to extrude again. We need to choose our square this time. Since there's multiple options for it to select, it won't do it automatically. So we choose our little square, and we need this to cut. There's a couple ways to get that started. Since my cursor is usually near it, I like to just grab the arrow and drag it back. But then if you notice, it has our negative 0.9 at this point, but over here, this is half of our 1.5 distance. So that would actually be negative 0.75. Okay, so we can edit that number to cut out our piece. If it's not red for some reason, you might need to change where your cursor is, or you might need to change in the settings for your extrude to make sure it says cut. But if it worked out, now we have one more little edge to cut. We're going to make a new sketch, select our new plane for their cut edge. We need another rectangle. We're going to start at the corner, and this one is 1 by 1. So 1, tab, 1, hit enter. Again, we finish our sketch. We choose our extrude button. We click on our little square now, and again, we can click and drag. This one is a little less critical because there's nothing else behind this. If you wanted to be certain, you could come over here and still type negative 0.75 and choose enter. Okay, this is our first object. We need to go back and hit save. It'll ask us for our version description. We're just going to say okay for right now. We have our first object. All right, for our secondary object, we need to create a new component again. for this to be able to show correctly in our multi-views. So I'm going to hit create. Okay, new component. Oop, wait, before we do that. So remember, if you do that when you're already selecting your object down here, it's not going to come out correctly. It'll be nested. We want to click up on the name of our object up here and then hit create new component. Averted disaster for a moment. Actually, we should be able to do that within our file here, but for now, we're going to practice what we've been doing. We're going to name this number 3. It'll hide this original, and now we have the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. This shape is the one we need to make. So we can go about it a pretty similar way. Let's go through some of our steps. We're going to create a sketch. If you notice, our planes are still oriented around our origin. That's perfectly fine. This time we're going to hit, let's see, our front plane again, but we don't need to make it right on top of our first shape. We can push it to the side. I'm clicking my scroll wheel on my mouse and dragging the page to pan and move our object away. So I'm going to start with our front view down in the bottom right here. Our front view has a shape of, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 squares across and 6 squares tall. So if we start down at this bottom red line, which is our x-axis, we had 7 across at 1 inch for every 2, so we'll have 3.5 inches across, and if we hit tab, we'll have 3 inches tall. For now, I'm just going to start with this. We're going to finish our sketch. We're going to extrude this box. And the thickness here, if we look at our top view, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks across, so we have 2.5 inches. So we've started with our box here. If we notice though, it's got cuts from the top down into the shape of our box. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a sketch, and I'm going to choose the top, the very top of our box here. Okay, so I'm going to click there. So now, whenever we make these shapes, it's going to start directly at that surface of our box. Okay, what we can do is we're going to click our 2-point rectangle. We're going to start it in the bottom right. Okay, and if we look at our shape here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks tall, so 2 inches, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks across, so 2.5. So this first one needs to be 2.5. Okay, my vertical one needs to be 2. It'll look something kind of like that. All right, I'm actually going to create my other shapes in this sketch as well. So from this corner, if we take a look at the next block, it is 3 blocks, so 1.5 inches tall, and 4 blocks across, so 2 inches across, 1.5 inches tall. We're going to click our circle tool. And directly in the middle of this smaller rectangle, we need to make our circle. So if you notice, it's a little hard to see, but there is a blue line. So if I put my cursor around the center, it'll give a blue X to show where the center of that line is. And if I start bringing my cursor down, it'll bring this dotted line to show that it is in the center in that direction. But we still need to know the center up and down vertically here. So we're going to come across here. We have our little triangle showing us our center. And now if we bring it to the middle, we should see 2 dotted lines, one vertically, one horizontally, to show that we're in the middle. All right, for our diameter, it looks like our circle goes 2 blocks across. So we're going to say 1 inch in diameter. That looks about right. And we are going to finish our sketch. If it keeps your view flat, we can choose our home view up in the view cube to move things around, and then we can extrude. So for this first extrusion, I'm going to extrude just our little piece here. Okay, our distance that we need is going to be cut down into our shape by 0.5 of an inch, so negative 0.5. All right, we do want to actually use that sketch again. Since we did all the work to draw it, we're going to use them again. If we open our little arrow for the object we're working on, let me move this so you can see. So this is our browser, right? We have our object we're working on, number 3. If we open the little arrow, we're gonna see a few folders here. We need to open our sketches, okay? And on our second sketch that we did here, we can open our little eyeball for our view so it's visible again, so that we can use the rest of these features that we've drawn. So we're gonna extrude again. This time we're gonna click on our smaller rectangle. I'm gonna drag it down a little bit just to make sure we can see. And then if you notice, this one is 1, 2, 3 blocks down. So this is -1.5. And then we hit enter. See how we're getting closer? So now we still have the circle. That is not really where it needs to be yet. So we're gonna extrude, we're gonna choose our circle, and then this one needs to go down through the entirety of our object. If you want to, as you drag this down and you notice, we have an extent within our options here. We could just say through all, and it'll cut through the whole thing. We're gonna hit OK. Now we see all of our object the way it's supposed to be, but we still see this sketch on top because we told it to be visible. So we're gonna come over here, click our little eyeball, and now we have our finished 2 shapes. We're gonna save this and hit OK. And then if we can close our little arrows, if we wanna see both of our shapes solidly, we're gonna come up to our top level in our browser and activate our components and click to deselect. And here are our shapes. I'll go through another video momentarily for the drawings version of this, but for here, that's gonna be it.